Hey internet friends, in this video my goal is to unscramble all of the chaos of the last week. A century-defining week, with Venezuela being just the beginning. So much is happening, so much is going on, let's just get everyone up to speed, shall we? Over the past weekend, the United States captured Venezuelan President Maduro after a video was released of Maduro taunting, "Come get me."
Venga por mí. Aquí lo esperan Miraflores. No se tarde en llegar, cobarde.
And the more I look, the more orchestrated I think this all is, with all of these wardrobe changes of Maduro, his thumbs up signs, and the ease at which he was taken. Though now they're reporting that there were over 100 Venezuelan deaths in this attack and at least that many injuries as well. Prosecutors have alleged that Maduro, his wife, and son were engaged in a drug trafficking conspiracy partnered with cartels which the United States has designated as terrorist groups. So they go in and grab them, and then Trump announced that the U.S. would be running Venezuela for the foreseeable future until there could be a peaceful transfer of power. And by the way, Big Oil is welcome to come in and get this party started.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so.
And I just have to wonder, why now? Why all of a sudden? Why did this need to happen now? That's the question that hardly anybody is asking. But okay, anyway, I digress. Since then, U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright discussed the Trump administration's strategy for Venezuela's vast oil reserves. Like I said, they're bringing in all the big oil companies and giving the infrastructure an update. And the Energy Secretary is basically echoing what the U.S. UN Ambassador Mike Waltz's stance was, that adversaries cannot be permitted to control the world's largest energy reserves, which frames the whole intervention as this necessary law enforcement rather than an occupation of a foreign country. And through the eyes of Uncle Sam, this whole thing seems to be justified by an expanded Monroe Doctrine, which was established back in the 1800s and said that the Western Hemisphere was no longer open to further European colonization or interference. Otherwise, it would be considered a hostile act against the United States. But instead of European influence, it's any influence except for our greatest ally. And I say this because in the face of U.S. sanctions, which were very detrimental to Venezuela, Venezuela joined the Belt and Road Initiative in 2018. And if you don't already know, China's Belt and Road Initiative launched in 2013. It aims to connect Asia, Europe, Africa, and other places by land and sea. And China's doing this by investing in ports, railways, energy projects, and other things to increase trade, protect its resources, and ensure Chinese hegemony. It's really not that complicated. Venezuela has received tens of billions of dollars in Chinese loans and investments, mostly in the form of these oil-backed agreements and joint ventures in their infrastructure and mining, meaning that Venezuela was always key for the BRI. And now China's acting kind of mad, saying that they denounce, the capture of Maduro. It's a violation of sovereignty and international law. But if you read between the lines here, China doesn't seem all that mad because the loans they gave Venezuela are still getting repaid. And all the while, Democrats initially denounced Trump's actions in Venezuela, but their main gripe, did you notice what their main gripe was? That he didn't tell them first. They weren't informed of the action beforehand. They're not mad he took Venezuela. It's all fake outrage. Shortly after the capture of Maduro, Trump sent warning to the governments of Mexico, Colombia, and Cuba that they might be next. And as of yesterday, Trump is saying that the U.S. will conduct land strikes against the cartels in Mexico. He's claiming that the cartels run Mexico.
We've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by water, and we are going to start now hitting land with regard to the cartels. The cartels are running Mexico. It's very, very sad to watch and see what's happened to that country, but the cartels are running, and they're killing 250,000, 300,000 people in our country every single year.
Interesting, right? But if you can conduct land strikes without much recourse on a foreign country, and that foreign country does nothing about it, is it not up for grabs? Even if the attack is under false pretense, is Mexico not in play for America's manifest destiny? Under this ideology, in fact, I'd say the whole hemisphere is in play for the endless frontier. I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong. I'm just asking, Is this what's happening? There's so much tension, and it's just escalating. 2 Russian-flagged oil tankers with up to 2 million barrels of Venezuelan oil, allegedly, were detained by the United States on Wednesday. One of the vessels had eluded American forces for weeks. They've been chasing it this whole entire time. And apparently, more tankers are being boarded this morning as I'm recording this, Friday, January 9th. They're saying that these ships are members of a so-called ghost fleet of ships that covertly transport oil for Venezuela, Iran, and Russia, all in defiance of international sanctions, spoofing their locations and evading detection. Russia has strongly denounced the seizure of their flagged tanker, referring to it as a gross violation of maritime law and outright piracy on the high seas. While some folks have speculated that the tankers were transporting Venezuela's gold reserves because the United States has always plundered all gold reserves during invasions and regime changes of sovereign states, Iraq and Libya being 2 examples. Just to wrap it up here on Venezuela for this video, I got a lot of comments on my last video saying, us Venezuelans are happy for the U.S. occupation. Adios, Maduro. It's about corruption. It's not even a smidgen about controlling the oil because everyone in the comment section is an expert on oil quality. And I have to wonder, through this particular lens of reality, why the U.S. has to be the world's police. And why now? Why do members of the U.S. military, people's sons and daughters, why do they have to risk their lives for your country? After the guy who ran on no wars became president of the USA. We've got other comments saying that the occupation is over Venezuela meddling in the 2020 elections, but I don't believe we have free and fair elections or that any software used for voting isn't completely backdoor controlled by the CIA. So I disregarded your comment entirely. Then I've got some folks saying that it's actually Venezuela's proximity in regards to the Leviathan sleeping on the ocean floor so the U.S. can nuke the eye of it before it wakes up. And also that the oil is the dragon's blood and this is all biblical prophecy unfolding. While Venezuela was the main act this week, there are tons of moving pieces in the background, one being control over the vast ice sheet known as Greenland. It's funny because exactly a year ago, if you go back in my video archives, you can see where we were discussing Acquisition of Greenland in a video titled The Dawn of a New Age. And like clockwork, this week, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has informed Congress that the United States intends to purchase Greenland. And now it's being reported that the United States is also considering a lump sum payment of up to $100,000 per resident of Greenland to buy their country. It's very interesting because the U.S. has actually been in Greenland a very long time, since the Second World War. It's, of course, a Danish territory, and Denmark has said that the U.S. is welcome to bring more troops. But ownership of such a territory, well, that opens up a whole other can of worms. And I've read everything from the melting ice across the Arctic, opening up new trade routes and shortcuts, to control over Greenland's abundance of rare earth minerals, which are now key in production of electric car batteries and building of data centers, which are fueling the AI bubble. Plus, once the U.S. has Greenland, Canada will be surrounded on all sides. Might as well just join the United States at that point as America's hat. There's so much F and G drama over this whole Greenland thing. The Danish Prime Minister warned on January 5th that an American invasion of Greenland would spell the end of the military alliance and the end of NATO. Oh no, not the end of NATO. What will we do? They even ran the headline, Denmark will shoot first and ask questions later over Greenland. And we're all over here shaking in our boots. Meanwhile, Rothschild banker French President Macron said this week that the U.S. is gradually turning away from its allies and breaking free of international rules. Dun, dun, dun. At any rate, also announced this week was Trump calling for a $1.5 trillion defense budget to build a dream military. In other words, it's popping off, and that's a $1.5 trillion military budget going to Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, so congratulations to them. But anyways, I guess it's here where we arrive at the continental consolidation, all unfolding amid this deterioration of the petrodollar. And maybe there's this prevailing belief in Washington, D.C. that this has to happen, otherwise dollar dominance will fall. If our current trajectory continues with fake puppet governments, fake elections, and U.S. hemispheric hegemony, I guess you could say that Trump could actually be the last directly quote-unquote elected U.S. president. Will the future be corporate leaders and CEOs controlling specific economic zones? I would say it's not a coincidence at all that tech billionaires were all front and center at Trump's inauguration, coupled with Elon Musk's role in Trump's presidency. It was Elon's grandfather who was part of proposing this whole North American Technate in the 1930s, after all. All the pieces in play are blood red on this map that was proposed in 1930. In an editing note to me, at the end of this video, I'll play a clip explaining more about this map. But for now, let's shift our attention over to Iran. Nationwide protests have taken place in Iran over the past few weeks because of the country's economic distress, reportedly including high inflation, rising prices for food and fuel, alongside high unemployment. What began as small economic protests quickly spread to dozens of towns and turned into larger anti-government rallies with chants against top leaders in the Islamic Republic itself. In response, the Iranian government has launched a crackdown, sending security forces, making mass arrests, using force against protesters, and shutting down the internet to make it harder for people to work together and report on the situation. Now we've got human rights groups saying that many people have died. I think the count is at 50 right now, and hundreds or thousands have been detained. The leaders of Iran say that the protests have been caused by foreign meddling, and they're warning the protesters of harsh consequences, basically saying that Israel and the U.S. are backing these protests. It's a CIA color revolution, y'all. It's just Iran this time. Trump has threatened intervention if Iran kills more protesters. Meanwhile, Iran says that if Americans interfere, that would cross a red line. And I'm sitting over here wondering if Americans need to die for these Iranian protests. I think not, but I think it would benefit Israel and, by association, Israel, the United States of Israel, if Iran's regime fell and could be replaced much in the same way as the regimes of Syria and Libya and Iraq have. And keep in mind that just like Venezuela, Iran and China signed a 25-year strategic cooperation agreement in 2021 that opened the door for Iran's participation in the Belt and Road Initiative. And by the way, just like Venezuela or Greenland, by America pushing its frontier endlessly outwards towards the Arctic and towards South America. The Zionist manifest destiny includes pushing Israel's borders out to Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and the Sinai Peninsula. This is the land they believe God promised them. And well, at least front-facing, at least on paper, Iran and its allies seem to be standing in the way of that manifest destiny, whether you like Iran or not. Clearly missing from this international report is the war between Russia and Ukraine, but it's business as usual. They're still attacking each other, draining each other of resources and young lives. While the business of war, the war machines thrive. I don't know about you, but this week to me feels like one of those weeks suspended in time. A week which will define the next century. I want to know what you think, internet friends. Are the actions of President Trump America first? And by America first, I mean Americans first, the regular everyday ones. Are these actions and agitations worth risking American lives? Maybe some are, maybe some aren't. You tell me. My position is that I understand statement of intent. I realize that they tell you what they're going to do before they do it. Whether that statement of intent came 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago or was disclosed in some, snooty little PDF 10 years ago. They tell you. I recognize patterns, and I know that most of you are able to do the same so you can make informed decisions for yourself and your families, no matter what kind of unrest is happening at whatever corner of the world. Anyways, until next time, thank you for watching, subscribing, supporting my channel on Patreon, and buying my book, The Deep State Encyclopedia. Bye.
I intend to resign as party leader, as prime minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
Why are we supporting a country 200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state.
The world, the Panama Canal is a disgrace, what took place at the Panama Canal. Jimmy Carter gave it to them for $1, and they were supposed to treat us well. I thought it was a terrible thing to do. So the Panama Canal is under discussion with them right now. So we're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time.
In terms of concepts strongly associated with the past, there's a lot of territory to cover. No pun intended. The North American Union, the 10 Kingdoms of the Bible, the Club of Rome. But today I want to talk about the North American Technate, and even more specifically, Elon Musk's granddad, who was a leader of the technocracy movement in Canada from 1936 to 1941 before he left for South Africa. The technocracy movement became famous when its founders, a group of scientists and engineers headed by Howard Scott, made an energy survey of North America under the banner of Columbia University. The Technical Alliance, as it was first called, was basically documenting how wasteful the current capitalist system was back in 1919. But at this point, it's kind of difficult to nail down what they meant by the idea of technocracy as they moved forward, the group eventually splitting into two. Even in his book comparing socialists and technocrats, published in 1933, Paul Blanchard said that the meaning of the word technocracy shifts from day to day, but it can basically be boiled down to this core idea. Well into the industrial era, technocracy's founders believed capitalism would fizzle out as machines would soon replace men, and they set forth to design a society that would succeed capitalism when that collapse inevitably occurred. From these key points, we can ascertain that the technocracy was clearly anti-capitalist and anti-democratic, and it was also anti-government, but not really anti-government in a libertarian way. Its original founders believed in a radical form of social and economic equality while not identifying with Marxism. And given the context of the time, science and technology were changing the very fabric of North American society. And the technocracy believed that only highly trained experts and scientists were capable of leading a new North America into greatness. And I reckon that the hope of greatness and prosperity held a particular appeal during the depths of the Great Depression, when the technocrats of the 1930s maintained that they would be stewards of these machines in this industrial infrastructure instead of the greedy capitalists, the current masters of those machines. And if the technocrats were allowed to rule over the natural resources that North America had to offer, the average workday for an individual would exceed no more than 2 hours. That was the original pitch, at least. But basically, our society would sink or swim based on the technicians, their own elite class or echelon, being the controllers instead of the elected politicians. And that's the key idea here. That's the takeaway. No more elected politicians, just kind of like these self-proclaimed experts leading society. While money as an exchange is at the center of a capitalist system, at the center of the technocracy is energy. And published in a bunch of pamphlets and papers well into the 1940s, the Technocracy Incorporated was really good at seeding fear over a crumbling capitalist society, wherein the monetary system crumbled and stepping in as the savior would be energy accounting, or the means of tracking how much energy was used to produce things, rather than what we do now, which is measure the cost, the monetary cost of production. In the technocratic society, energy credits were deducted when you bought something, and the certificates were issued directly to the owner. So they couldn't be bought, sold, traded, or stolen. Nobody could collect more than anybody else. Trying not to inject my opinion or skepticism here. So the North American Technate is a concept that came out of the technocracy that refers to a blueprint for turning North America into a technocratic society, combining Canada's minerals and hydroelectric resources with the U.S.'s industrial infrastructure and farming strengths. This blueprint includes North and Central America, the Caribbean, parts of South America, and Greenland, that's important there, and Greenland, encompassing 30 countries and numerous other territories, and if it were implemented today, it would become the world's largest nation. Can you picture it? Stretching from the North Pole to the equator and from the Caribbean to the international dateline in the Pacific. Also, if we're going to keep it modern for just a minute, controlling the whole Arctic doesn't hurt for a military advantage in World War III, just as an aside. It also doesn't hurt that Greenland has many untapped deposits of rare earth minerals to be used for electric vehicles and windmills. The Christian perspective on technocracy that was published in 1933, entitled The Technocrazy Old World, Technocracy in the Light of Prophecy, said that the technocracy was, quote, an exciting, fascinating, and disturbing idea put forth by a group of scientists and engineers. They tell us, in effect, if you hand over complete control of the business system to us, we will give every citizen a living wage for life, in return for 4 hours of work a day, 4 days a week, 10 months a year, between the ages of 25 and 45. In reality, the bait is on a hook, the probable surrender of personal liberty by the average man in order for that small group of scientists to receive absolute power over life and death over this nation, end quote. In a later chapter, the author writes, quote, while we are speaking of money, under technocracy, the present monetary system would be destroyed. This would mean that a great mass of people who have sacrificed to save something from the fruits of their labor, that they might be financially independent in their old age, would find themselves suddenly penniless, end quote. Elon Musk's maternal grandpa was born in Minnesota but moved to Canada and was a chiropractor and political activist. From 1936 to 1941, Joshua led Canada's technocracy movement, working to promote a technocratic society in which technology experts would run things instead of elected officials. In 1940, the Canadian government banned this movement, deeming it subversive because it outright opposed Canada's involvement in World War II. Elon Musk's grandpa was arrested for a short time, but later proven not guilty. So after all of this, after the fall of the technocracy in Canada, he joined the Social Credit Party and ran for office in 1948, but he lost. History and current mass media publications call Elon Musk's grandpa an anti-Semite because the Social Credit Party published the Protocols of the Elders of Zion as a part of their political ideology. Hildman moved to South Africa in 1950 and continued to work as a chiropractor there. And this is really weird, but for 10 years it says that the Hildman family spent time roaming around the Kalahari Desert in search of its fabled lost city of the Kalahari, flying back and forth in their little plane. In 1971, Hildman's daughter May gave birth to his first grandson. The boy's name was Elon Musk. 3 years later, Joshua Hildman died in a plane crash. At the World Government Summit in Dubai in 2017, Elon Musk expressed his support for a guaranteed basic income. He warned that mass unemployment will be a massive social challenge, pretty much echoing the words that his grandfather likely uttered many times just decades before. And then Elon Musk also warned at the summit there will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better. With automation will come abundance. Elon Musk is historically a South African turned Silicon Valley Democrat investor, said to be one of the publicly richest men in the world. And he's since purchased what he calls a free speech platform, X, formerly known as Twitter, and aligned himself with President Donald Trump after Trump's assassination attempt in Pennsylvania in 2024. And Musk's influence over Trump and Trump policy has earned him the title President Musk. And he's even heading up a new department of government called the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. Musk is a cultural force who shapes public perception and policy every single day. And due to this expertise, we're going to call it expertise, and influence, rather than being an elected official, he was appointed as head of DOGE. And really, this whole image that Musk is painting recently as he's a recent Republican, at its core, government is too slow and inefficient. He believes that the government should be comprised of experts and none of the waste. Which sounds really good on paper, right? But when is expanding the roles of government ever good? Technocracy's focus on engineers, experts, and scientists was rooted in the conviction that there was a technological fix to almost all of society's problems that couldn't be solved with elected officials. because they simply weren't the experts. Now, with the emergence of AI and robots, which is the new boogeyman in Silicon Valley, it seems that there's a new band of leaders looking to answer how government should react when huge numbers of people just up and lose their employment to automation. And how can a constitutional republic, with all of its flaws, work effectively in a world where science and technology dominate? It appears that expanding the borders, essentially globalism, rebranded and cheered on by followers of the right and conservatism, by the way, is one answer. And I need to say this, it's not like I'm painting these ideas in a negative or a positive light. This is not me trying to vilify ideas and concepts or even push them. I'm just trying to be as objective as a person can be. It's just that I tried not to insert my opinion in this if this is happening behind the scenes, what I just talked about, the subtext or context of the events playing out on the world stage. I think you and me, we should have a say, and this discussion should be held out in the open, not happening behind closed doors. And in order to have a say, in order to have an opinion, in order to give your consent or rescind your consent, you have to, have an understanding of what was and what will be should this move forward. Though I can hear your keyboards right now, and I'll certainly get some comments wondering where the coverage of Elon Musk's mother posing with the one eye and all this crazy stuff, and Elon Musk dressing up in the New World Order garb, tweeting about the New World Order after Trump won the election, setting his little profile picture to this outfit called the Devil's Champion a couple of years ago. I'll certainly get questions asking why I didn't cover that, or why I didn't cover how Wernher von Braun wrote this book and predicted a man named Elon would colonize Mars. The predictive programming around Elon Musk and his family nearly rivals Trump. Nearly, with Ingersoll Lockwood's writings predicting the last president of the United States and writing children's books about the adventures of little Baron Trump back in the late 1800s, with all these weird parallels to the Trump family and presidency. A work of fiction, which I've covered couple times on this channel. Even though in real life, Trump's uncle, John Trump, was one of the few people who had access to Nikola Tesla's laboratory. And now Elon Musk runs a company called Tesla, and Trump and Elon have teamed up. And this all makes truth and reality much stranger than any fiction ever written. I'm happy to point it out, and I'm happy to talk about it. But for the purposes of this video, all that conspiracy 101 stuff, there's too much left to interpretation. Even though I personally interpret it a certain way, and I'm sure you do too. But the technocracy and their plans, they were all spelled out long ago, plainly and published. And just like the Tears for Fear song says, everybody wants to rule the world.